How can a normal drop-off at a train station turn into a warning from a 9-year-old that we could not go home? What was my partner really doing if she was not getting on that train? And why did I see her again 15 minutes later with people who looked ready to change my life in one afternoon? My name is Caleb. I am 41 years old. I work in logistics. I move pallets, schedules, and people's promises from one place to the next. I am used to staying calm when others get loud. I am also used to being the person who drives, pays, and fixes things without getting thanked. That morning looked normal on the surface. Renee needed to take the train for a day trip. She told me it was for a work-related meetup with a friend. She said it like it was already decided, like I was only there to make it easier. She asked me to drive her because the station parking was expensive, and she did not want to deal with it. I told her it was fine. I did not want a long talk in front of our son. Liam was in the back seat. He is 9. He sits quietly when he feels something is off. That day, he did not ask for music. He did not ask for snacks. He just stared out the window and kept rubbing the edge of his sleeve. Renee sat in the passenger seat. She scrolled on her phone. She checked her reflection in the side mirror. She adjusted her hair twice. When I tried to tell her the train schedule looked tight, she said she knew what she was doing. Her voice was light, but the message was clear. I was not needed for thinking, only for driving. Traffic was slow near the station. The streets were full of buses and people dragging rolling bags. Renee sighed like the city was doing this to her on purpose. She told me to find a better lane. She told me I always chose the worst routes. I kept my hands steady on the wheel. I did not answer her the way she wanted. Over the years, I learned that the quickest way to end these little tests was to stay calm and finish the task. We pulled into the drop-off area. The curb was crowded. Cars paused, people rushed, doors slammed, horns tapped. Renee leaned forward to check the time again. She said she could not miss it. She said she would be so upset if she missed it. She said this like it would be my fault, not the traffic or her planning. I stopped near the sign that said short loading only. Renee opened her door and stepped out fast. She grabbed her bag and walked 2 steps away. Then she turned back and reminded me to keep Liam calm today. She said it in a way that sounded like advice but felt like blame in advance. I nodded. I told her we would be fine. Renee walked toward the entrance. She moved quickly, like she was late. But I noticed she did not look at the departure boards. She looked at her phone again. She looked around the crowd. It was the kind of scanning you do when you are looking for a person, not a platform. Liam leaned forward between the seats. He asked if we were going straight home after. I told him yes, after we made sure Renee got inside. He nodded, but he still looked tense. Renee reached the doors and stopped. She did not go in. She stood near the side, close to a pillar. She held her phone at chest level like she was waiting for a signal. She had that small, polite smile she uses with strangers. She uses it when she wants to look harmless. A man in a dark jacket walked up to her. He was older than Renee, maybe mid-40s. He stood too close, like they were comfortable with each other. She turned her body slightly toward him. Her shoulders dropped, like she was relieved. Then she glanced back toward the road, toward my car. I could not hear what they said, but I could read the shape of it. Renee's head tilted. The man nodded once. Then Renee stepped away from the doors and walked toward the side walkway that led around the building. Liam's breathing got shallow. I asked him what was wrong. He leaned close so his voice would not carry. He whispered that we could not go back. He said he heard Renee and Tara talking earlier. He said he heard them planning to lock us out of the house. He said he heard Gavin's name too. For a second, I felt like my brain hit a wall. My first thought was that Liam might have misunderstood. Kids hear things and twist them. But Liam is not the kind of child who makes up stories for attention. When he lies, he smiles. When he tells the truth about hard things, he looks like he wishes he did not know. I asked him when he heard it. He said it was last night when he went to get water and stopped near the hall. He said Renee was on the phone. He said Tara was on speaker. He said they were laughing. He said they talked about how I always did what I was told. He said they talked about a lock change and how I would learn to stop acting entitled. He did not use those exact adult words, but I knew what he meant. He said they talked about doing it fast, before I could make a scene. My hands tightened on the wheel. I made myself loosen them. I told Liam he did the right thing by telling me. I told him we were going to stay safe and think clearly. Liam asked if Renee was trying to take our home. He asked if we were in trouble. I told him we were not in danger right now. I told him our job was to stay calm and stay together. Renee was still outside the station. She was not rushing for a train. She was walking with that man, moving around the corner of the building. If she was truly leaving town, she would not be doing that. If she was truly worried about time, she would not stop to meet someone. I felt the urge to jump out of the car and confront her. I could already imagine her face. I could imagine her saying I was overreacting. I could imagine her acting confused and turning the crowd against me. I have seen her do it in small ways. She could turn a simple question into a story about my control issues. She could make me sound unstable with one soft sentence, so I did the opposite of what my emotions wanted. I told Liam we were going to move the car. I said we were going to a place where we could watch without being seen. I said it was like when he plays hide and seek, but safer. I drove into the parking garage across the lane. The concrete ramp curled upward, and the air changed from warm street smells to cool dust and oil. The garage was busy, but the top level had open spots. I parked near a corner where we could see the station entrance through a gap between pillars. Liam sat still, his hands in his lap. I turned the engine off. The sudden quiet made my heart sound loud in my ears. I asked Liam to stay low and look through the window, not over it. I told him we were not spying for fun. We were being careful. He nodded. He did not ask questions now. He watched. I watched too. At first I saw nothing. People walked in and out. A couple hugged. A worker pushed a cart. A family argued over a suitcase. Time crawled. I checked my phone. No new messages. Renee's location services were not shared with me. That had been a fight months ago. She said it was about privacy. I had believed her. Now it felt like a piece of a larger pattern. I tried to keep my mind in order. What did I know? Renee said she was taking the train. She asked me to drive her. She did not actually go inside. Liam heard a plan to lock us out. If that was real, it meant someone was willing to turn our home into a lever against me. It meant they thought I would panic and beg. That thought did something inside me. Not anger, more like a switch. A cold light came on. I saw the shape of the situation without the old fog of hope. Liam whispered that he saw her. I leaned forward slightly. Renee appeared again, walking back into view. It had been around 15 minutes since she left my car. She was not alone. She walked with Gavin, her cousin. Gavin is tall and broad-shouldered. He always fills a doorway like it belongs to him. Even at family gatherings, he talks like he is leading a meeting. He is not rude in a loud way. He is rude in a calm way, the way a person is rude when they believe no one can stop them. Beside Gavin was Tara. Tara is Renee's closest friend. Tara smiles too much. Tara touches people's arms when she talks. Tara acts like she is always trying to help, even when she is cutting someone down. And behind them was a man I had not seen before. He wore a plain work shirt and dark pants. He carried a tool bag. He moved with the quick steps of someone who knows the job and wants it done. The four of them crossed the street together. Renee was in front, leading. Gavin stayed half a step behind her, as if he was there to back her up. Tara kept turning her head, checking around. The worker looked down, like he was counting his steps or avoiding eye contact. They stopped near the corner for a moment. Renee pointed toward the parking area and then toward the residential direction, like she was giving a route. Gavin nodded. Tara held up her phone and typed quickly. The worker shifted his bag on his shoulder. Liam's face went pale. He asked if they were going to our house right now. I did not want to say yes before I knew, but the truth was obvious. The tool bag was not for a train, it was for a door. Renee was dressed for a short trip, not a long one, and her eyes had that hard focus she gets when she has decided she is right and everyone else will adjust. My body wanted to move. My mind told me to move with purpose, not panic. I started the car without making it loud. I told Liam we were not going home yet. I said we were going to stay close but not let them see us. I said we were going to keep options open. Liam asked if we should call someone. I told him we would, but we would do it the right way. I told him we would not shout in the street. We would not chase people. We would not give them a story to use. We stayed in the garage and watched them disappear around the building. I took a slow breath and let it out. Then I looked at my phone again. A message from Renee came through. The preview said she was already on the train and her signal might be weak. The timing was almost perfect, like it was meant to settle me down, like it was meant to stop me from thinking. But I had just watched her walk away with Gavin, Tara, and a worker with tools. I turned my phone face down on my thigh. Liam stared at me, waiting for what I would do next. I kept my voice steady and told him we were going to stay together and stay smart. I told him I believed him. I told him we were not going to walk into a trap just because someone expected us to. The drive out of the station garage stayed in my head like a loop. I kept seeing Renee walk away with Gavin and Tara like it was normal. I kept seeing the tool bag swinging at the man's side. It was not a small bag. It was the kind you bring when you expect to touch a door, a frame, a lock, something that decides who gets in and who stays out. Liam sat behind me, quiet again. I could tell he was trying to be brave. He was watching my face in the rearview mirror, checking if I was going to fall apart. That look did something to me. It reminded me I had to be steady, not just for myself, but for him. I told him we were going to take a slow route and think. I said we were going to keep our heads clear. As I drove, I started pulling old moments out of the back of my mind. Not because I wanted to suffer, but because I needed a clean picture. I needed to know if this was truly a sudden event, or if it was the last step in a long plan that I had ignored because I wanted peace. I met Renee 5 years ago at a community event. It was a small fundraiser. I was helping with setup, carrying boxes and moving tables. Renee was there with friends, smiling, talking to everyone like she belonged in every room. She came over and thanked me for helping. She said most people just showed up when the food was ready. I remember thinking she noticed the quiet work. That meant something to me. Back then, she asked questions that felt genuine. She said she liked stable people. She said she did not like drama. She said she wanted a calm home. I believed her because I wanted the same thing. My job was already full of last-minute changes. I liked the idea of a partner who wanted steady days and honest talk. When we moved in together, I tried hard to keep that promise. I paid bills on time. I handled the repairs. I kept a simple budget and saved for emergencies. When Liam's school needed supplies, I bought them early. When Renee had a tough week, I cooked, cleaned, and kept the house quiet so she could rest. At first, she seemed grateful. She would tell her friends I was dependable. She would tell her family I was reliable. Those words felt like respect. But over time, those words started to change. Dependable became predictable. Reliable became boring. Calm became passive. She started saying these things with a smile, like it was playful, but the message landed the same way. About a year in, I changed jobs. My old role had long hours and unpredictable shifts. The pay was decent, but the stress was constant. Renee wanted more time together, and Liam was starting to need more structure, so I took a logistics manager role with steadier hours. The pay was slightly lower, but it was stable. It let me do school pickups, cook dinner, and be home on weekends more often. Renee said she supported it, but later, in small moments, she would bring up the pay difference like it was a character flaw. If we disagreed about spending, she would say I chose the safe path, and then act like I had no right to say no to her plans. If I reminded her about a budget, she would say I was acting like a parent, not a partner. She said I was blocking her life. Then Gavin started showing up more. Gavin is Renee's cousin, but he acts like an older brother. He has strong opinions, and he shares them whether you ask or not. He works in property-related work, the kind where he knows contractors, managers, and people who can make things happen. He likes the feeling of access. He likes being the person who knows someone. At first, I tried to include him in a normal way. I thought family ties mattered. I thought it was good for Renee to stay close to her relatives. But Gavin did not treat me like family. He treated me like a placeholder. He would comment on my job like it was small. He would suggest I should step up without saying what that meant. He would ask Renee questions about our plans, then answer them himself, like I was not sitting there. Renee did not correct him. Sometimes she laughed, sometimes she looked away. The silence was its own answer. Tara also became part of our daily life. Tara was the kind of friend who always had a crisis and always needed help. She would show up for coffee and stay for hours. She would talk about other people's relationships like she was an expert. She would tell Renee that a strong woman should never settle. She said a partner should match your energy. She said life was too short for quiet men. I heard these comments, and I told myself they were just words. I told myself Renee loved me for the life we built, not for someone else's opinion. I told myself every couple has outside noise. If you give it too much attention, it grows. The problem was that the noise was not outside. It was in our living room, in our kitchen, at our dinner table. There was a cookout in our neighborhood last summer. It was one of those casual events where people bring food and stand around talking about work, kids, and home projects. Renee looked bright that day. She wore a new outfit and acted like it was a fresh start for us. I was hopeful. Gavin came, of course. He walked in like he owned the street. He greeted people with confidence and a loud laugh. He slapped my shoulder like I was a coworker, not family. Then he started talking about how men should lead their homes. He did it in a story about someone else, but he kept glancing at me. He said some men let life happen to them and then wonder why they get left behind. People smiled politely. Some nodded. Renee did not shut it down. She laughed at the right moments and let him keep going. When I tried to change the topic, Gavin raised his voice slightly and kept the floor. He made me feel like a guest in my own neighborhood. Later that same day, one of the neighbors said I had patience. He said it like it was a compliment, but his eyes looked sorry. That stuck with me more than Gavin's speech. At Liam's school, the pattern continued in a different shape. Renee started saying she should handle all school communication because she was better with people. She said I was too direct and might offend someone. I have never shouted at a teacher. I have never been rude. I just speak clearly. But Renee framed my calm tone as a problem. Tara played into it. At pickup, she would stand near Renee and talk loud enough for others to hear. She would mention how hard it is when one parent does all the planning. She would mention how some dads just show up and think that is enough. She said these things while looking at me like she was testing if I would react. I did not react. I focused on Liam. I asked him about his day. I checked his backpack. I kept life moving. At home, Renee started making small changes without telling me. She moved my mail off the counter and said she was organizing. Sometimes important letters would be in a different drawer, and when I asked, she would say I never pay attention. She changed shared calendar events. She would put dinners or outings on days I had already said I had work tasks. Then when I reminded her, she would say I was always making excuses. She also began talking about our home like it was hers alone. She did not say it directly, but she acted it. She would tell me where to put my shoes. She would tell me what I could store in the garage. She would say certain rooms needed to look presentable, which meant my things needed to disappear. I started sleeping on the couch sometimes, not because we fought loudly, but because the air in the bedroom felt tense. Renee would turn away from me and scroll on her phone late into the night. If I asked what she was doing, she would say it was nothing. If I asked again, she would say I was being suspicious. Then she would act hurt, like my question was an attack. I tried counseling once. I suggested we talk to a professional. Renee said we did not need that. She said she did not want a stranger judging her. She said I should just change the way I was. She said I should be more confident, more exciting, more like the men she saw online. She said she did not sign up for a quiet life that felt small. I thought about the sacrifices I had made, and I wondered when they stopped counting. I had taken the steadier job for our family. I had cut back on hobbies so we could save. I had missed work events to attend school activities. I had tried to be steady in a world that kept shifting. None of it gave me credit in her eyes anymore. It was like stability became the floor, not the gift. The most painful part was what it did to Liam. Kids sense tension even when adults try to hide it. Liam started asking if Renee was mad at me. He asked if I did something wrong. He asked if we were still a family. He did not say these things every day, but when he did, it landed heavy. I told him grown-up problems were not his fault. I told him both parents loved him. I kept my answer simple. I did not want him carrying adult weight, but I also did not want to lie to him. In the weeks before the train station day, I noticed Renee and Tara messaging more often. Renee would smile at her phone, then look at me like she was measuring something. Gavin also started calling Renee late. She would step outside to answer. When she came back in, her face would be set, like she had been given instructions. One night, I walked down the hall to turn off a light. I slowed near the corner because I heard Renee's voice. She was in the kitchen, phone on speaker. Tara's voice was coming through, bright and sharp. They were talking about me, not as a person, but as a problem to solve. Tara said I would never stand up for myself. Tara said I would fold if I was embarrassed the right way. Renee agreed in a quiet, confident tone. I did not step in. I did not slam a door. I did not announce myself. I went back to my room and sat down, feeling something settle inside me. By the time I drove away from the station garage with Liam, that memory was no longer just a painful moment. It was a signpost. It showed me that what happened today was not sudden. It was a planned step, built on a belief that I would stay silent no matter what they did. And as I held the steering wheel and watched Liam's small hands twist in his lap, I understood one clear thing. Silence was not the same as surrender. I did not drive straight home after the station. I took side streets and kept distance from the main roads. I did not want to pull into our driveway and find a surprise waiting. I also did not want Liam to see strangers at our door. He had already heard too much for a 9-year-old. I stopped at a small grocery store parking lot a few blocks away. It was busy enough that we would not stand out. I parked near the far side, under a light pole. I told Liam we were going to sit for a moment and breathe. I asked him if he needed water. He shook his head. His eyes stayed wide, like he was listening for something even in the quiet car. I checked my phone again. Renee sent another message saying she had bad signal and would call later. The words were calm. The timing was not. I did not answer. I did not want to give her a clue that I knew more than she expected. I started thinking like I do at work when a shipment is missing. I stopped guessing. I went back to facts. Who moved, when they moved, and what they likely wanted. Liam asked if Renee was lying. I told him that adults sometimes say things that are not true when they want control. I told him he did not do anything wrong. I told him my job was to keep him safe and keep our life stable. He nodded, but his shoulders stayed tight. I called my neighbor, Ms. Dale. She is older, practical, and kind. She has watched Liam in emergencies before. I did not explain everything. I told her we might need a safe place to sit for an hour. I told her I would not be long. She said her door was open. We drove to her house. Liam walked in and went straight to the couch like he had done it 100 times. Ms. Dale gave him a blanket and turned on a quiet show. Then she looked at me like she was asking the real question. I told her Renee was out and there might be a problem at the house. I asked her to keep Liam calm if I needed to step out. She said she understood and told me to be careful and smart. I sat at Ms. Dale's kitchen table and made a list on a notepad. I wrote the time Renee got out at the station. I wrote the time I saw her again. I wrote the names Liam gave me, Gavin, Tara. I wrote tool bag and underlined it. Then I wrote home access because that was the real target. Not my feelings, not my pride, my access to our home and my ability to keep Liam's routine normal. I drove past our street once, slow, without turning in. I did not want to be seen, but I needed a look. There was a car I did not recognize parked near the curb 2 houses down. It was a plain sedan, the kind that blends in. I kept moving. My chest felt tight, but my hands stayed steady. I looped around and parked 2 streets over. I walked the rest of the way, using back sidewalks, staying behind hedges and parked cars like I was trying not to disturb a sleeping neighborhood. It felt strange to move like that in my own area. But that day was already strange. When I reached the corner near my driveway, I stopped behind a tree and looked. Renee's car was there. Gavin's truck was there too, angled like he had arrived with purpose. Near my front porch, I saw the worker with the tool bag. He had a small step stool and was talking to Gavin. Tara stood a few feet away with her phone up, like she was ready to record or call someone. Renee stood closest to the door, her arms crossed, her posture confident, like the house was already hers. I watched for less than a minute, but I saw enough. Renee pointed at the door handle. Gavin gestured toward the frame. The worker knelt and touched the lock area. That was not a conversation, that was a job. I did not walk up, I did not shout, I did not run at them. If I did, I would become the story they wanted. I would be the angry one, I would be the unstable one. Renee would stand back and look frightened. Tara would narrate it for anyone listening. Gavin would play the calm protector. It would all move fast, and Liam would be caught in the middle of it. I walked back the way I came. My steps were quiet. My heart was not quiet, but I kept my breathing controlled. I reached my car and sat for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. I stared at the dash and told myself one sentence, over and over. Do it the right way. I drove back to Ms. Dale's house. Liam ran to me as soon as I opened the door. He asked if we could go home now. I knelt and told him not yet. I told him we were going to stay here tonight. I said it like it was normal, like it was a simple choice. I did not want him to feel like we were being chased. I wanted him to feel like we were in control of our next step. Liam asked if Renee was trying to keep us out. I told him some adults make bad choices when they think they will not face consequences. I told him I would handle it through the proper channels. He asked what that meant. I said it meant I would talk to the right people and use the rules that everyone has to follow. That night, after Liam fell asleep on Ms. Dale's couch, I sat at her table again. I opened my laptop and started a timeline document. I wrote each event in plain words. I added the names and times I remembered. I did not write emotions. I wrote facts. I wrote Renee said train. I wrote Renee seen outside station. I wrote group scene with worker and tools. I wrote lock work observed at home. Then I went to my own home office in my mind. I pictured where things were stored. I knew I had a file cabinet with old paperwork. Not because I was planning for a fight, but because I am the kind of person who keeps records. I keep warranties. I keep lease papers. I keep utility account letters. I keep anything that might matter if there is a dispute or mistake. Renee used to laugh about it. She called it my paper habit. In that moment, it felt less like a habit and more like a lifeline. The next morning, I drove to my house early while the street was still quiet. I did not bring Liam. Ms. Dale agreed to keep him for an hour. I parked down the block and walked up like I was going to check the mail. The front porch looked normal from a distance, but when I got closer, I saw faint new marks near the lock plate. Not a dramatic change, just the kind of small signs that tell you someone tried to adjust something. The door was closed. I did not test it yet. I looked around first. Gavin's truck was gone. The worker's car was gone. Renee's car was gone. The neighborhood looked sleepy and ordinary. That made it feel worse. Quiet can hide a lot. I took out my phone and opened my notes app. I wrote down the date and time. I took a photo of the lock area. I did not linger. I walked back to my car. I told myself not to do anything impulsive. A door can be replaced. A narrative is harder to fix if it spreads first. I made 2 calm phone calls from my car. One was to my work, to tell them I might need personal time and would keep them updated. The other was to a coworker I trust, someone older who has been through messy separations and property disputes. I did not share details. I asked for the name of a good family attorney. He gave me one name and said she was clear, firm, and focused on process. He told me to keep everything documented and to stay polite in writing. After those calls, I went back to Ms. Dale's. Liam was eating cereal and watching his show. He looked more relaxed than the day before. That mattered. Kids recover in small ways when adults keep things stable around them. I told Liam we were going to school like normal. I told him Ms. Dale would pick him up in the afternoon if needed. I said it in a calm tone, like we were just planning a routine day. On the drive to school, he asked if he did the right thing by telling me. I told him he did the best thing. I told him he was brave and smart. He stared at his hands and nodded like he was trying not to cry. I kept my voice steady and told him he was not alone. After drop-off, I sat in my car in the school parking lot and stared at the building for a long moment. I thought about how quickly adults can turn a child's world upside down while still smiling in public. I felt anger rise, but I did not feed it. Anger is loud and messy. I needed clarity and structure. I drove to a public library and booked a small study room. It gave me space to think without being watched. I made a second timeline, this time going back months. I wrote about the cookout. I wrote about the school pickup comments. I wrote about Renee moving mail and changing calendar events. I wrote about late calls with Gavin and long messages with Tara. I wrote about the night I overheard them saying I would fold if embarrassed. While I wrote, something else became clear. This was not only about a door lock, it was about control. They were trying to push me into reacting. They were trying to put me in a corner where I would either accept whatever they wanted or look like the problem when I resisted. By the time I left the library, my switch had fully flipped. Not into rage, into direction. I did not want revenge in a messy way. I wanted a clean outcome. I wanted Liam protected. I wanted my access to home and my rights respected. And I wanted the people who thought they could play games with a child's stability to face the rules they had ignored. That evening, I sat at Ms. Dale's table again and started organizing what I already had. I created folders on my laptop labeled by date. I saved screenshots of Renee's messages. I saved the photos of the lock marks. I wrote a short summary of what I saw, using plain words. I kept everything calm and simple. I did not know every step yet. I did not know how Renee would escalate next. But I knew one thing with full certainty. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They were about to learn the difference between quiet and powerless. The next few days were not dramatic on the outside. They were quiet, structured, and tiring in a slow way. I went to work when I could. I kept Liam's routine steady. I answered messages in short lines. I did not argue. I did not accuse. I did not try to convince anyone of my feelings. I focused on facts, records, and the places that keep order when people try to bend it. Renee kept texting like nothing serious had happened. She wrote that she needed space. She wrote that I was making things hard. She wrote that I should stop involving other people. She wrote that Liam was confused and that I was feeding it. The wording was careful. It sounded like concern, but it also sounded like someone building a story for later. I replied only when I had to, and only about Liam's schedule. I told her what time school started and ended. I told her where Liam would be. I told her I wanted all communication about Liam to stay clear and calm. I did not mention the station. I did not mention the porch. I did not mention Gavin or Tara. I wanted her to keep thinking I was in the old habit of staying quiet and taking whatever came. On the second morning, I went to Liam's school early. I arrived before the first bell. I walked into the front office with my shoulders relaxed and my voice even. I asked to confirm Liam's emergency contacts and pickup list. I said I wanted to make sure the records were correct. The receptionist looked uneasy. She said Renee had called the day before. She said Renee asked to update permissions. The receptionist said Renee spoke confidently, like it was routine. I told the receptionist I understood, and I asked for the proper process. She brought over a form and said changes needed signatures and identification. She also said some notes had been added to Liam's file, and the counselor might want to speak with me. I asked to see Ms. Ortega. Ms. Ortega invited me into her office. Her tone was careful, like she had already heard a version of the story that made her cautious. She said Liam had seemed distracted. She said he had asked to sit near the door during class. She said she wanted to make sure he felt safe. I told her I appreciated her attention. I told her there was tension at home and that Liam overheard adult talk that scared him. I told her I was keeping him with a trusted neighbor temporarily to keep his routine stable. I told her I was handling the situation through proper channels. I did not insult Renee. I did not label anyone. I only said Liam needed steadiness, clear rules, and adults who spoke carefully around him. Ms. Ortega listened without interrupting. She asked if Liam had seen shouting or scary scenes. I told her no. I said the problem was not loud conflict. The problem was adults trying to control access and rewrite reality. I said Liam's fear came from overhearing plans and seeing adults act like rules did not matter. She nodded slowly. She said she could offer Liam short check-ins during the week. She said she would document concerns appropriately. She said it was important for both parents to follow school procedures, not personal demands. I told her I agreed. When I left, I felt the first small shift in my chest. Not relief, but alignment. One place of order had heard me without drama. After the school, I went to a small bank branch where our household accounts were held. I took a number and waited. I watched people sit with folders and pens. The room was quiet, almost gentle. It reminded me that systems do not care about who has the sharpest smile. Systems care about rules and records. When I met the banker, I explained that I needed to review recent activity and ensure my basic obligations could be met. I said I wanted to confirm what changes had been requested and what protections existed. I kept my tone polite, like I was talking about routine maintenance. The banker told me there had been an attempt to move funds in a way that would have left one account nearly empty. The banker said it did not go through as requested because it required additional confirmation. The banker asked if I wanted to add extra steps for withdrawals and transfers. I said yes. I asked for notes to be added that changes required both parties following the official process. I left the bank with my hands steady and my mind sharper. It was not just the lock, it was not just school forms, it was a pattern. Renee was trying to create pressure points and then act like my reaction was the real issue. Later that afternoon, I went to the neighborhood association office. It was a plain building with old carpet and a bulletin board full of rules and reminders. I signed in and waited. I saw a few people holding paint samples and repair forms. Most of them looked tired, like they just wanted life to run smoothly. Mr. Patel came out and greeted me. He said he remembered my earlier visit. His face was neutral, but his eyes were alert. He took me into a small office and asked what I needed. I told him I wanted to understand what requests had been made about our address. I said I wanted to know if any approval had been granted for lock changes or access adjustments. I said I wanted the information in a formal way, through their standard procedure. Mr. Patel explained that Renee had contacted them and asked about replacing locks, claiming it was an emergency. He said they did not approve anything. He said they told her that entry and lock changes were private matters unless community property was affected. He also said that if there was a dispute between residents, they advised using legal guidance and not trying to force changes through the association. I told him I appreciated the clarity. I asked if he could note the inquiry and the response in the official record. He said he could. He asked if there was a safety concern. I told him my main concern was that proper rules be followed and that no one be misled into helping with improper actions. Mr. Patel nodded and said he understood. When I walked back to my car, I felt the second small shift. The association was not on Renee's side by default. They were on the side of process, and process was where I was strongest. That evening, Ms. Dale told me Renee had driven past her house. Ms. Dale said she saw Renee slow down like she wanted to stop, then keep going. Ms. Dale asked if she should say something if Renee returned. I told her no. I told her to stay calm and not engage. I said we were not trying to win conversations. We were trying to keep Liam stable and keep a clean record of what happened. Liam asked me that night if we were going to lose the house. He asked in a small voice, like he was afraid of the answer. I told him we were not going to lose our stability because someone tried to scare us. I told him adults have rules, even when they pretend they do not. I told him my job was to make sure those rules were followed. He asked if Renee would be mad at him for telling me what he heard. I told him no one should be mad at a child for telling the truth. I told him he did the right thing. I told him he did not start anything. He simply noticed something and spoke up. The next morning, I met Ms. Chen in a public library study room. It was quiet, with a small table and 2 chairs. I chose the library on purpose. It felt neutral. It felt calm. It felt like a place for facts. Ms. Chen arrived with a notebook and a measured expression. She asked me to start from the beginning and keep it simple. I told her the station timeline. I told her what Liam overheard. I told her what I saw at the house from a distance. I told her about the school contact attempts. I told her about the bank transfer attempt. I told her about the association inquiry. She did not react with shock. She did not make a big face. She listened like a person who has seen many people try to create advantage through confusion. She said the first goal was to protect Liam's routine and keep communications clear. She said the second goal was to secure access and stop any self-help behavior like lockouts. She said the third goal was to avoid public scenes and keep everything in the proper lanes. I asked her what I should not do. She said I should not confront Gavin or Tara directly. She said I should not send emotional messages. She said I should not show up at the house with a crowd. She said I should not let Renee pull me into arguments that could be rewritten. I told her I agreed. I told her I did not want chaos. I wanted stability, fairness, and clear boundaries. She asked if there were any cameras at the house. I told her there was a doorbell camera. I told her it sent motion alerts. I told her I had already taken photos of the lock area and saved message screenshots. Ms. Chen said I was doing the right things and told me to keep everything organized by date and time. Before we ended the meeting, she said there was a formal route for resolving property access disputes and parenting schedules when people tried to bypass agreement. She said she would guide me through it step by step. She did not show me any official papers in that room. She did not lay out a full plan in dramatic words. She simply said we would do it properly and that the truth needed structure to be heard. On the way out of the library, my phone buzzed again. Renee wrote that she wanted to meet as adults and settle things quickly. She wrote that she was tired of my games. She wrote that Gavin could mediate because he was fair. The message was almost funny in a sad way. It asked me to accept her cousin as a referee in a dispute where he was already involved. I did not respond. I saved the message to the folder labeled with today's date. That afternoon, when I picked Liam up from school, Tara was there. She stood near the walkway like she belonged there. She smiled at Liam and spoke softly, like she was trying to look caring in front of other parents. She turned to me and said we should be reasonable. She said Renee was under stress. She said I should stop making things harder than they needed to be. I kept my face neutral. I told Tara I would only discuss Liam's schedule with Renee directly and through appropriate channels. I told Tara this was not her role. Tara's smile tightened. She said I was being cold. I told her I was being clear. She stepped back, still smiling, and watched me buckle Liam into the car. Liam looked down at his shoes. He did not speak until we were driving away. Then he asked why adults say kind words with sharp meanings. I told him some people use soft voices to hide hard intentions. I told him he did not have to learn that lesson alone. I told him I would keep things safe and simple for him. That night, after Liam went to sleep, I sat at Ms. Dale's kitchen table again and reviewed everything I had gathered so far. I arranged it by date. I wrote short summaries. I did not decorate it with feelings. I kept it clean. I kept it calm. Renee and her circle still believed I was the same man who would apologize just to end the tension. They still believed I would accept whatever they decided. They still believed I would stay quiet because I was tired. They were partly right about one thing. I was tired. But I was done being steered by other people's confidence. I was done letting a child carry fear because adults wanted control. And I was done thinking that calm meant I had to accept disrespect as the price of peace. I was building something steadier than anger. I was building a record. The week moved like a slow machine. Nothing exploded in public. No one shouted in the street. Renee did not show up at school with a loud scene. Gavin did not knock on Ms. Dale's door. Tara did not stand at the curb again. On the outside, it almost looked like everyone had calmed down, but I could feel the pressure underneath. Renee kept trying to pull me into the kind of talk that leaves no record and no clear meaning. She sent messages saying she wanted to reset. She sent messages saying I was overreacting. She sent messages saying Liam should not be around outside people, as if Ms. Dale was a stranger. Each message was written to sound reasonable if someone else read it later. I kept my replies short and only about Liam. I wrote the school times. I wrote where he would be for activities. I wrote that I wanted all pickup decisions to follow the school's rules. I did not add opinions. I did not add history. I did not add a single line that could be twisted into drama. Ms. Chen told me that calm writing was a kind of strength. She said the system respects clarity. She said confusion is what people use when they want leverage without responsibility. She told me to let Renee create her own record. So I did. I kept building my timeline each night after Liam fell asleep. I added dates and times. I saved screenshots into folders that matched those dates. I wrote a one-line summary for each item. I did not let myself turn it into a diary. It was not a place to vent. It was a place to keep order. One afternoon, I drove to the house again, alone, and parked down the block. I walked up with slow steps like I belonged there, because I did. The front door looked normal from the street. When I got closer, I saw the lock plate had tiny fresh scratches, like a tool slipped. The handle felt a little tighter than before. That might sound small, but small changes matter when someone has tried to control access. I did not force anything. I did not test the door in a way that made noise. I took another photo, then walked away. I kept the photo and the time in my notes. At work, I spoke to my supervisor and told him I had a family situation that might require short notice flexibility. I did not blame anyone. I did not speak badly about Renee. I said I was handling it properly and I might need to take a few hours for appointments. My supervisor looked relieved that I was not asking him to solve my personal life. He told me to keep him updated and to take care of my child first. That comment stayed with me. Take care of my child first. It was simple, and it cut through the rest. Ms. Chen called me the next day and said a formal meeting had been scheduled through the county process. She said it was set up as mediation, which meant a structured conversation with a neutral person guiding it. She said it was not a place for dramatic speeches. It was a place for facts, decisions, and clear next steps. I wrote the date and time on a sticky note and placed it on the edge of my laptop screen. Then I put the same date on my phone calendar with a plain label. No emotional title, just meeting. When I told Ms. Dale, she nodded once and asked what I needed. I asked if she could watch Liam for a few hours during the meeting. I told her he should not be in the building, not for that kind of conversation. She agreed. She said Liam could help her water plants and sort mail, and she would keep the day normal. That night, I sat with Liam on the couch and explained that adults sometimes need a guided talk to make rules clear. I told him he would stay with Ms. Dale for a few hours while I did that. I told him he would go to school like normal. I told him his job was to be a kid and focus on his day. He asked if Renee would be there. I said yes, likely. He asked if Renee would be angry. I told him it was not his job to manage adult feelings. I told him adults are responsible for their own choices. He looked at the floor and nodded slowly, like he was trying to believe me. Before bed, Liam asked if we would ever sleep in our own house again. I told him we would. I told him we were not giving away our stability because someone tried to scare us. I kept my voice steady, but I felt the weight of the promise. I did not want to give him false comfort. I also did not want to give him fear. So I held the line I knew I could stand behind. We will handle it properly, and you will be safe. Over the next days, Renee's tone shifted. The messages became less soft and more pointed. She wrote that I was making her look bad. She wrote that I was turning people against her. She wrote that I was being stubborn. She wrote that Gavin was upset with me and wanted to talk man to man. I did not answer those parts. I only answered questions about Liam's schedule. I noticed that Renee stopped asking about Liam's homework, his lunch, or his mood. She asked about pickup times and who he was with. That told me what she cared about. Access and control, not the child himself. 2 evenings before the meeting, Tara sent me a message for the first time in a long while. She wrote that everyone should calm down and stop escalating things. She wrote that Renee was fragile and I should not push. She wrote that I should agree to a private talk at a cafe, just the adults, no lawyers, no formal stuff. I read it once and saved it. I did not respond. Gavin also sent a short message. He wrote that the house needed order and that I had confused Renee. He wrote that he was stepping in to help. He wrote that I should be grateful someone was willing to guide me. I read it and felt something cold settle behind my ribs. Not fear, not anger, just certainty. He was not trying to help. He was trying to stand in the middle and control the outcome. I saved the message and closed my phone. The day before the meeting, I prepared in a simple way. I packed a small bag with Liam's school items, an extra shirt for him, and a few snacks. I packed my own basics in case the meeting led to immediate changes in access. I did not tell myself a dramatic story. I told myself it was a practical step. In my car, I placed a plain folder on the passenger seat. It was not flashy, it was not thick, it was just my way of staying organized. I also charged a backup battery for my phone, not because I planned to record anything, but because a dead phone during a tense day is an avoidable problem. That evening, Renee sent one more message. She wrote that she hoped I would come to my senses at the meeting. She wrote that she did not want to embarrass me. She wrote that she had been patient with me long enough. The words were meant to sound like mercy, but they were built like a threat. I did not reply. I put my phone on silent and went to wash dishes at Ms. Dale's sink. I needed my hands to do something normal. I needed Liam to see me doing normal things. Stability is often made from small, boring actions. On the morning of the meeting, I woke before my alarm. I sat at the edge of the couch and listened to the house. Ms. Dale's place was quiet. I heard the refrigerator hum. I heard a car pass outside. I breathed slowly until my heartbeat stopped racing. Liam woke up and asked if today was the day. I told him yes. I asked if he wanted pancakes or cereal. He chose cereal. He ate quietly and watched his show. He kept glancing toward me like he was checking if I was still solid. I drove Liam to school and told him Ms. Dale would pick him up later. I told him I would see him after my appointment. I did not promise anything about Renee. I did not promise anything about the house. I promised something I could control. I promised I would show up for him. Ms. Dale picked him up and texted me that they were home and everything was calm. I read the message once, took a breath, and started driving to the courthouse. The building was plain and official, the kind of place where no one cares who is charming, the kind of place where you pass through the same doors as everyone else. I parked, locked my car, and walked in with steady steps. In the hallway outside the mediation room, I saw Renee first. She stood near the wall with her arms crossed, wearing a confident expression like she owned the situation. Tara was beside her, leaning in close, talking in quick, low bursts. Gavin stood a few feet away, watching the hall like he was security. Renee looked at me and gave a small smile that did not reach her eyes. Tara stopped talking. Gavin's chin lifted slightly, like he was waiting for me to shrink. I did not shrink. I did not glare either. I nodded once, like I would nod at a coworker in a hallway, and I sat down on the opposite side of the waiting area. A few minutes later, I saw Mr. Patel from the Neighborhood Association walk in. He carried a folder and looked mildly uncomfortable, like he wished he was handling paint samples instead of conflict. He saw me, paused, and gave a polite nod. He did not smile at Renee. He just moved to the sign-in desk and waited. I watched Renee's face change for half a second. She had not expected neutral people with neutral records to appear. She had expected a private argument where she could steer the mood. I placed my phone face down on my knee and kept my hand still. I focused on one thing: stay calm, stay factual, stay within the lanes that do not bend for pressure. When the mediator called our names, I stood, adjusted the strap of my bag, and walked to the door without looking at Tara or Gavin. I entered the room and took my seat with a steady breath, ready to let the process do what it was built to do. The mediation room was small and plain. A round table sat in the center. A clock ticked on the wall like it did not care who felt right. The mediator introduced themselves and explained the ground rules. They said we would speak one at a time. They said personal attacks would not help. They said the focus was practical decisions, especially around a child and a shared home. Renee went first. She spoke smoothly, like she had practiced. She said she needed space because our home did not feel calm anymore. She said I was controlling and difficult. She said I refused to accept change and that I used Liam to pressure her. She said she never wanted conflict, but I left her no choice. She also said she had every right to secure the house because she was afraid of my reactions. I listened without moving. I did not interrupt. I watched the mediator take notes. I watched Tara's face, waiting for me to snap. I watched Gavin's posture, relaxed like he believed the room would follow his confidence. When it was my turn, I kept my voice low and steady. I said I wanted stability for Liam. I said I wanted access to the home we lived in. I said I did not want private arguments in parking lots or doorways. I said I wanted the same rules applied to everyone. I did not call Renee names. I did not accuse her of anything in emotional terms. I said there were specific actions and specific dates that needed to be addressed. Then Ms. Chen placed my binder on the table and opened it. She did not slam it down. She opened it like a professional opening a work file. She started with home access. She presented the official paperwork showing who held the legal right to the property and how residency was defined. She explained it in simple terms. She said changing locks without proper consent and process was not a personal decision. It was a serious action with real consequences when a child's stability was tied to that address. Renee tried to respond quickly, but the mediator held up a hand and asked her to wait. That small gesture changed the room. The mediator was not here for performance. The mediator was here for order. Ms. Chen moved to the timeline. She showed printed message logs with dates and times. She pointed out the message Renee sent saying she was already on the train, and she matched it to a time-stamped record from the doorbell camera later that day. She explained that the camera captured motion at the front porch, and the time aligned with the same period Renee said she was traveling. The mediator asked to see the footage. Ms. Chen played it from a device, and the room went quiet. The video showed Renee on my porch with Gavin close by. It showed a worker kneeling at the lock area while Gavin stood over him. It showed Tara holding her phone up and looking around like she expected someone to arrive. The video did not show shouting. It did not show chaos. It showed planning. Renee's face tightened. She said the worker was only checking the door because it was loose. She said she was protecting the home. She said I was twisting things. Ms. Chen did not argue. She turned a page and presented a service invoice. It showed a lock-related visit tied to our address, with a time that matched the doorbell footage. It also listed the contact name used for the call. It was not my name. Gavin leaned forward like he wanted to speak, but the mediator told him he was not a party to the mediation and he needed to stay quiet unless asked. That was the first time I saw Gavin lose control of a room. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He sat back, still, but his jaw moved as if he was chewing his own frustration. Ms. Chen shifted to the school records. She presented a printed log from the school office showing attempted changes to Liam's pickup permissions and emergency contacts. She included the notes from Ms. Ortega's check-ins, kept in a professional tone. The notes described Liam's stress and his need for stability. They did not blame anyone. They simply recorded what a child was showing and what the school observed. Renee tried to say she was only organizing things. She said I was unreliable and that she needed to take charge. Ms. Chen asked the mediator to look at the dates. The attempted changes happened after the station incident, after the lock activity, and during the period Renee claimed she was trying to reduce conflict. The sequence spoke for itself. Next came the bank summary. Ms. Chen presented account activity showing an attempted transfer that would have left the household account nearly empty. She included the bank's note stating that extra confirmation was required and that the attempt did not complete as requested. The mediator asked why the transfer was attempted. Renee said she was protecting herself financially. Ms. Chen asked why the attempt was made without discussion and during a period when Liam's living situation was already unsettled. The mediator did not comment, but the silence had weight. Mr. Patel was then invited to speak. He confirmed that Renee contacted the neighborhood association about lock replacement approval. He confirmed that no approval was granted and that the association advised using the proper process for disputes. He did not take sides. He did not add emotion. He simply stated what the office received and how they responded. By that point, Tara looked less confident. She stopped smiling. She stared at the table like she wished the wood could swallow the papers. Renee's posture changed, too. Her shoulders lifted and stiffened. She started to look around as if someone would rescue her from the facts. The mediator paused and summarized what they had heard. They said there was a clear pattern of unilateral actions that affected housing access, school permissions, and household funds. They said these were not small misunderstandings. They said that if both parties wanted stability, the first step was stopping any self-directed moves that blocked access or created pressure. They said all further changes needed to go through formal channels. Ms. Chen requested immediate practical outcomes. She asked that my access to the home be restored without delay. She asked that any keys in Renee's possession be returned. She asked that school contact lists remain unchanged unless updated through the proper signed process. She asked that communication remain focused on Liam and done in writing for clarity. The mediator agreed and began writing the terms. Renee objected, saying she could not trust me. The mediator replied that trust was not the point today. The point was process and the child's stability. The mediator said if Renee had safety concerns, there were formal ways to raise them, but a lockout and hidden changes were not acceptable. At that moment, Officer Blake entered the room. They were not there to intimidate anyone. They were there because the mediator had requested a civil standby for the exchange of keys and access arrangements. Officer Blake explained their role in a calm voice. They said they were not taking sides. They said they were there to ensure the agreed steps happened without confusion. Renee looked at Gavin, searching for a signal. Gavin stayed still. He did not have one. Tara glanced at her phone and then put it face down. The mediator finished writing, then slid the document across the table. Renee hesitated. Ms. Chen did not rush. She simply waited, hands folded. The room held its breath in a quiet, heavy way. Renee signed. Her hand moved slowly, like each letter cost her something. Then the mediator asked for the keys. Renee reached into her bag and pulled out a small key ring. She held it for a second, staring at it like it was a token of control she did not want to release. Then, with Officer Blake watching and the mediator's pen resting on the table, she placed the key ring down in front of me. I picked it up without a smile and without a comment. The metal felt cold in my palm. Ms. Chen closed the binder, neat and final. Gavin's chair scraped the floor as he pushed back, not fully standing, just shifting like he did not know what to do with his hands anymore. Tara stayed seated, eyes fixed on the table. The mediator confirmed the next steps, then ended the session. I stood, placed the keys in my pocket, and walked out of the room with the same calm pace I had used to enter.